You are watching the Fayetteville Government Channel. Up next, full coverage of the latest City of Fayetteville ward meeting. Ward meetings are held at various times by City Council members to interact with and receive feedback from the residents of their ward.
Well, it is a wonderful night for Ward 4 and Friends meeting. Thank you all for being here. Friends, and let's go around and introduce ourselves so we all know each other by name, and then we're going to turn it quickly over to Chris Brown, our city engineer, Jeremy Pate, director of lots of things, including planning services, and we're in great hands with Chris and Jeremy. I think Alan and I both would agree that.
Appreciate them very much.
Very much. As soon as we got on the council, as soon as I did, I know that I learned a lot from these two men, and so I feel very fortunate tonight that they're here giving up their family time to be with us. So I'm Rhonda Adams, Alderman for Ward 4, Position 1.
I'm Bob Page. We live on Rupel.
You live on Route 1, Page.
Larry Lomas, live on Sandra Street.
Matt Carlstein, I live on Howard Nickel Road. Bob Castro, also on Howard Nickel.
Bill Muller. I live far from here, but I'm very interested.
Beth Presley, I'm now Ward 1, but I'm about a quarter mile from where Rupel will hit MLK, so I'm very interested.
Glad you're here.
Jeremy Batches, my backyard backs up to Rupel.
Charlie Holman, in Rupel Road.
I'm Lawrence Taylor, I also live in Rupel Road.
And I'm Ted Belden, I have property in Rupel Road.
My name's Alan Long, I'm the Ward 4 City Council Representative, Position 2.
I'm Chris Brown, as Ron said, I'm the city engineer.
Jeremy Baker City.
Well, just tonight we do have some major storm warnings, so if we do hear those sirens, we have a shelter downstairs, so we'll just come down there.
Thanks for checking that out.
Absolutely.
Good deal. We usually meet for about an hour, so we're going to make an effort to finish up about 7, but we want all the input we can get, and we'll start with Chris and Jeremy to take off, and she'll just kind of take notes maybe and hold comments, or Chris is going to listen, let Chris run it, and he can take comments if he wants to, or he can ask you to hold whatever, and then we'll all take good notes, because we have some citizens who have emailed me, and I'm sure Alan too, who want us to let them know what happens here, but it's being videotaped, and it will be posted, so if you have people who missed it and are interested, I'd be sure to tell them to go to the city website to pull down the video, okay? All right, well, here's Chris. Thank you.
Okay, I see you all found my comment form and project information, so that is just some written information about the project. There's not a lot of detail there, but there is some information. And then on the second page, there is a comment form. We have a couple of questions, and I'll go through those two for you. And then it's just kind of open-ended to provide whatever comments you'd like. We are talking about Rupel Road here today. Rupel Road has been on our transportation bond program since 2006, really. It was approved. And the main thrust of that particular project that was originally approved was the extension of Rupel. Just to get you oriented, this is Owl Creek School, and then Martin Luther King Boulevard, Highway 62 down here. So this was really the main project that was in the transportation bond program. About 2007, the council added this segment of Rupel up to and really through the Weddington. This is Weddington here. So up to and through to include widening that segment of roadway. Recently, we've received some federal funding from Rupel Road from Mount Comfort Road down to Starry Night View, basically that new location section that you guys may be aware of. Getting rid of the old bridge and that old kind of crazy intersection, really, and realigning with Rupel, so it's a four-way intersection. So this would be just a straight through, again, a new bridge and quite a bit of fill, a large project. So we have some design funding through the federal aid program for that. That kind of leaves this segment in the middle. The mayor is committed to constructing that project. The funding is something we've got to work through. But that is a relatively easy segment because we've got half of the road constructed already with the Lindsay development, so that project is done. So I'll just go through kind of each segment, talk about what some of the major elements are, and in general what we're trying to do here. So the first segment, as I said, is this new location. It's about 100-foot wide right-of-way, so a pretty wide right-of-way. Obviously, we've got extra space out in this area. But we do have 2 lanes in each direction, one lane 10 feet wide, one lane 11 feet wide, a 15-foot wide center median, 10-foot green spaces on either side, and then on the east side, a 5-foot wide standard sidewalk. On the west side, a 12-foot wide trail, so quite a bit wider on the west side. So that's kind of in general the cross section that's proposed for this segment. Moving up to the next segment, we have a little bit of a gap here in front of the school. It's already improved, so we're not proposing anything there. One of the questions we have on the comment form is the roundabout or the signal. Just to kind of give you a little bit of information about roundabouts, they are very efficient. We all use the roundabout that we have down by the hospital. They work very well. They can be a little interesting to go through sometimes for the first time. Or if you're going through with somebody who's going through for the first time, it can be interesting too. But what they do, as you know, they move traffic continuously. You never have to stop. I mean, obviously you have to yield if there's traffic in the roundabout, but if there's nobody there, you don't have to stop. The current 4-way stop there, you have to stop every single time at Persimmon and Rupel, right? So that's really the benefit of roundabouts. The downside of roundabouts are that because the cars never stop, the pedestrians you don't have the safe passage with a stoplight or something like that. So they don't handle really the pedestrians and bicyclists quite as well as a signalized intersection does. So that's kind of the trade-off. So we're considering roundabout or signal. We do plan on signalizing that intersection if we don't install the roundabout. So just like to get some feedback on what you think that intersection should be like. Obviously, the Boys and Girls Club and the school in that location, we are concerned about pedestrians. So just moving on up to talk about the cross-section. It's similar, 11-foot lanes and 10-foot lanes. A little bit narrower median. We're a little bit more constricted with right-of-way here. We got about 90 feet of right-of-way existing. So the median is 9 feet wide. We do in the Rupel Row area, we are proposing to keep that parking in place and actually move the curb so that it's a continuous parking section. So rather than having these cutouts, it'll actually be a parallel parking situation. So the 2 lanes of traffic with parallel parking in the pavement. That actually moves the curb right up next to the trail, so the trail will be right at the back curb through this segment.
How are you going to get 15 feet in there for trail?
Well, it all fits. The parking is 15, or I'm sorry, is 8 feet wide. So where we had a 10-foot green space in this section, we basically take that green space away, so the trail is right at the back of the parking. Which isn't really ideal, but it fits within.
Could the trail be moved to the other side? That's where you're going to expand that section of road on the east side, right?
Right.
So why couldn't the trail be over there?
We're actually widening to both sides. Right. But we've got the trail on the west side over here.
That's going to solve another problem when you get down to the rest.
I think I know where you're going with that.
Okay.
But this is the cross section that we have proposed. The west side really was chosen because of the school, and when you get into this segment, we have some storm drainage, we have some other constraints that makes that 12-foot trail and the curb location fit better through this segment. So let's see. Hit everything. Existing 8-foot wide sidewalk on the east side will remain in place. That's the wide sidewalk, wider sidewalk between Weddington and the Boys and Girls Club. So moving on up, as we get into the segment that, in between, the new location and Weddington, we go back to, let me make sure I got the right cross section. We do go back to the similar, section as the southern end with the 100-foot right-of-way, 15-foot center median, 10-foot green spaces, and the 12-foot trail on the west side, 5-foot sidewalk on the east side. So, again, when we talk about that, there are 2 lanes there now, so adding 2 lanes is a relatively straightforward.
Actually, we've got 4 lanes here now.
Right, there are 2 lanes on the east side that are striped, and there are almost enough for 2 lanes on the other side. That's right. It's about 20 feet wide. We need about 24, so there's not a lot of widening that needs to occur through that segment. And so the last segment is really just this new location with the bridge, improved intersection up at Mount Comfort, and again using that same cross section with the 15-foot wide median, the 10-foot green spaces, and the continuing the trail on up. So ultimately, I think what's important to note is that the trail is a continuous trail really from one end to the other. As this project continues on north, and as you all know, this is a segment that really runs all the way through the city, we would propose to continue that same cross section as opposed to bike lanes. And I did have some notes in there about bike lanes versus the trail. We can stripe this and add sharrows, which are the bike symbols I'm sure you've seen out there. In areas where we don't have bike lanes, you still can add that sharrow symbol that indicates bikes may be using that lane. And so that would be the proposal for the real hardcore bicyclists out there. The sharrow and the lane is always available. That's another question that we have on there is, which one would you be more likely to use? We really feel like because of the demographic, especially around the schools and the Boys and Girls Club, that children and families, that demographic would be more likely to use that trail. So that's the recommended solution for this particular project. I think that's all I had. I'm happy to take questions.
Chris, on this section that I'm interested in, okay, you know, there is no city sewer in that whole stretch down through there.
Okay.
Now, when Foster built that behind us in there, he had to go all the way down to Mount Comfort, bring it in from down there. Now, we're not tied into any city sewer in there.
We're north.
In fact, that we're just taken into the city when? About 6-7 years ago. We was an island.
It's not available to us.
And it's not available.
Foster offered tied in with his and something.
Yeah, if I wanted to pay him $8,000, he was tied in behind us.
That helps.
Here is
Yeah, we live right there. That White House right in the middle.
I think that's a good point. That's something that we've been talking about. This is a road extension, a road transportation improvement project. The utilities will be relocated if they're there, and that'll include water and sewer, phone, telephone, any of those that have to be relocated will be relocated. But we don't have in the budget to add any other infrastructure like that, so
I'm getting ready to clean my septic tank, so I didn't want to.
Which section?
There's no water in the sewer.
Well,
There's 5 houses here.
this is between
Weddington and all the way down through there.
All those houses are.
All them houses down through there.
from Weddington to the north. Of course, there's no infrastructure in the in the new location.
But you don't have any houses there yet either.
And, you know, all the
we'd like to, hook it, tie on to the city sewer if it ever gets there.
All this infrastructure that's in here was been constructed by developers.
Right, and like I say, he went all the way to Mount Comfort before he could get on. But like I say, my complaint is that we talked Lindsay into going on that side and doing all the work that he did to preserve the west side
With the existing houses already
because
there.
of the existing houses. At the time, when you had that 45 feet in there,
It would have been in our front door.
it would have been in the front door. And now you're adding another 30-some feet onto that, and we're going to be back in the front door again.
If you guys just, please,
Yeah, we
fill
will.
out the comment form, provide that, we'll
Yeah.
check that. Like I said, these are concepts, we don't have any survey out there, so the alignments and where it really falls in the world, you can't take this to the nearest foot. It's really a concept of what we,
Right.
the type of street that we intend to build. And we'll get down to that level of detail though, and we'll be discussing that part of it.
But, you know, as far as your trail goes, I'm all for trails, but, you know, we got a lot of trails, but I don't want one, you know, I don't want to give up my front of my house for a trail, you know? And I'm too old to use one anyway. I'm too old, too fat.
You got sidewalks across the street.
Yeah.
I think we had a question right over here.
Plus, all the east side of, all of this new stuff is all empty stuff, you know?
Well, except for the school.
A couple. One, I live on in Rupel Road, and they were out surveying the other day, and he was standing in my tree, which is in the halfway point of my yard.
Mhm.
But you're confident you can put the lanes, a diminished median strip with room for trees, plus the parallel parking, plus the
15 foot, yeah.
plus the trail, and then not take, because if we lose any of our yard, they're going to be.
You don't have much front yard.
We don't have much front yard, but they're not going to encroach on that.
Right. What we've got proposed through that section is a 90-foot wide footprint. So from the outside of the sidewalk to the outside of the trail, 90 feet wide, and that's the right of way that we have. Not to say there won't be a little bit of grading in the yard or something like that. That we would repair as time goes by, and before we finish the project. But we would end up losing the green space, so that, again, the trail, you'd have the trail and then immediately into the parking area. You wouldn't have any green space between the back of the curb and the sidewalk. Now, you'd have 8 feet from the driving lane because you've got that parking area. But that's how we fit it in there, is we don't have any green space between the edge of the trail and the back of the curb.
Have you talked to the school? I mean, have you talked to the principal at the school? The concern that I have about the roundabout is that every day at the school that's out, 2 volunteers from the Boys Club leads a group of about 70 or 80 elementary school children across Persimmon to go to the Boys and Girls Club. And of course, you know, my kids and I walk from Rupel Road down to the school, and trying to get across that 4-way stop is pretty hazardous. And if you're not allowing for folks that are filling out the survey, if you're not allowing for easy pedestrian access to the school, particularly if you've got a trail going through and you want folks to use that trail.
Plus, now you're considering later on this Weddington plan that we put together, was talking about another school there by the boys and girls too. You know, junior high or middle school with a senior center.
Yeah, I mean,
And there's more school kids for that intersection.
Absolutely. The roundabout, again, it certainly has its pros, but that's one of the cons, is how you handle the pedestrian traffic.
And a related issue is the speed on Rupel Road. Speed is
It's already a problem.
It's pretty big problem, because it's straight, it's flat. There are lots of college age renters that live. I mean, it's almost 90% college age students who know how to drive.
They overslept,
Yeah, I guess they're really fast, right? So I don't know is there any plans for any kind of speed control, or?
I think it's 25 through there right now. I guarantee you, 1 in 10 is going 25.
Right.
That's me.
Yeah.
It's like 30 miles an hour on the end.
Right.
When they get through that last curve.
I'm sorry.
What point area to the area you're talking about that you think is 25? Just right in front
So,
of the house?
yeah, it'd be the color of bond.
So you're thinking a little bit about when it wraps around, or?
In general,
In
from
general.
Persimmon to Weddington, that straightaway there, if all of a sudden, we blow the gates off of it and have multiple,
Well, increase the traffic, increase the amount of traffic that's on it too.
Schools kind of wonder.
We talked a little bit about speed in the street committee meeting. We had some opinions about that, had some input from some citizens about best practices for speed control, and does a straight stretch slow people down, or does having some curves in there encourage, somebody said encourages that raceway feeling, and so, yeah, so that was something you all were gonna really, you committed, I know, Chris, to the street committee to look into some studies on that and some recent urban planning, street planning kind of things, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are some details that we'll be looking at. That lane width, that's kind of what we're looking at here is narrower lane widths, 10 and 11-foot lanes as opposed to 12-foot lanes, which is typical. You know, that will do some, that has some benefit. The parallel parking along the side has a traffic calming effect. Trees in the median and some of the roadside things that you can do will have a calming effect. But, you know, this is, and especially as you get out here, you know, it's kind of open road and will be until the development comes in. And, you know, it is an arterial, so, you know, we're probably, in some of these areas at least, now not in front of the school and the Boys and Girls Club, but probably at 35 mile an hour or somewhere along in there is an appropriate speed, 35 to 40.
Where would you start that 35 to 40 then?
It would be beyond the school zone.
Because right now, kids at recess and everything else, they play out to the curb when they're out there. And I mean, the school will need to do something in the future too.
And that's, you know, the school zone is actually at least 20 miles an hour. That's the typical school zone. So.
Is there a plan to mark that school zone? It's not marked right now.
Yeah, it's not very much in the form of a crosswalk or anything.
We need to get that marked.
We did get a crosswalk, and that was one thing I was thinking, that helped us on Persimmon when we put the crosswalk in. There's not a crosswalk in this really densely populated section of Rupel between Persimmon and Weddington. There's not a crosswalk. It's about a half a mile from Weddington to Persimmon, I think. And there's not a way for folks in the Rupel Road neighborhood to get to the Boys Club unless they walk a half a mile to the nearest crosswalk or play Frogger, you know. So, so a crosswalk right there in the middle, you know, this works on Garland, you know, you have a nice, and it has blinking lights or even a raised crosswalk or something like this, I think would be a good idea. It would sort of the purpose.
Yeah, and we normally discourage mid-block crosswalks unless, and we have talked about some of these enhanced kind of things, so that would be something we'd look at. We would have to look, there are some warrants, basically. You have to have a certain amount of pedestrian traffic to warrant an intersection like that, a crosswalk like that. So we would be looking at that sort of thing. But we will, I mean, you obviously will have the Persimmon intersection. That's where we want people to cross and be able to cross safely.
Are push-button red lights and crosswalks out of the question?
Are you talking about
I'm a pedestrian. I'm walking down the trail. I come to a major intersection, and there's no traffic control at the intersection for whatever reason. Maybe there are stop signs, people ignore it. Maybe there are red lights, people run, you know, who knows. So I push a button, the light flashes yellow, then it turns red, and then I got 30 seconds to cross.
Right.
Now, is that out of the question? Is it too expensive to consider?
Well, I mean, the expense is a consideration. I think you're talking about a pedestrian hybrid beacon where it's basically just a pedestrian crossing. It only handles pedestrians. Normally those are away from intersections, but that's one that's basically dark. There's no light or anything on it. If the pedestrian comes up and pushes the button, then you get the flashing red light. We're actually using that system on the Frisco Trail where it crosses the school.
Yes.
That's the system, and we
And
actually.
as a driver, I can comment that's been very effective.
Yeah.
The pedestrians are much better behaved, and bicyclists are much better behaved now that they have control.
Across North Street there.
Yeah, on North Street, yeah. We've worked with the highway department on the school crossing, the School Avenue down south of MLK is a proposed one of those types of crossings, pedestrian hybrid beacon. and we've been able to get that permitted through the highway department. So it all really comes back to how many pedestrians do you have. There is a warrant. You have to have a certain number of people coming through to warrant that, to be allowed to put it in, basically. So those are the kind of things that we can look at. But it's not out of the question. I mean, any of these pedestrian treatments that you see around town, like you mentioned at the university, there are some other interesting ones out there that are even more effective than what you're talking about. Just we have to determine whether they're a good fit for this area and whether they're appropriate.
Just to tackle onto the light question, it seems like sometimes there is poor lighting, especially on the persimmon part where it meets with Route 4. You know, are there any plans like safety?
Yeah, if we did a signal, well, in either case, street lighting would be appropriate at the intersection. The signals typically have lights just off of the signal poles themselves. The roundabout, if we did a roundabout, we would want to make sure to light that up so it's easily lit or well lit.
You know, I think a roundabout would be great for traffic flow, but because of the boys club, the school, everything else, I think four-way stop would be
the only way you're going to
far
do
better.
I agree with that. The only thing is if you could possibly elevate the roadways to try to allow that pedestrian to go under the roadway or something so that there's not the conflict with the pedestrians in the roads. So that's what I think you've designed out there at the interstate on Weddington. That might be too expensive, but grade change, keep pedestrians below grade.
That's always the best.
Yeah.
Not the cheapest,
but it might be an option. But I really appreciate y'all keeping the parallel parking on Ruppel. That's a priority, certainly for that area, and I'm glad to see that. I understand the rest of it, and I think it looks good. Could you kind of comment about the time frame? I see 2016 is an anticipated kind of end of the date when all be completed. What do you see happening first, and kind of that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. The Transportation Bond Program, which was approved in 2006, has been split into 3 different bond issues, and it's related to our payback capacity. So we had 2. We're ready for our 3rd bond issue, hopefully in 2014. That's what, based on sales tax projections, we think we'll be able to issue those bonds in probably mid to 3rd quarter 2014. Our plan is to have this segment here ready, that as soon as we get that bond money in, we'll let this to contract and start construction. So that's why we're talking about this now, so we can get it designed, get it ready to go. As soon as the money's there, we want to go forward with construction. So that would be this first segment. This one has got a little bit more to it. There's some additional right-of-way and some other things that we've got to work on. But we would hope that it would be very close to that, if not at the same time. These would be under construction probably at the same time. They may not start at the exact same time. But, and then the segment up here, that's what the federal aid funding that I talked about. That's really more a function of how quickly we can get through the federal aid process. We're expecting it to take 2 years to get through the federal aid process, so start construction in 2015 and hopefully be completed by 2016. That's really kind of the one that we expect to take the longest. And then again, we've got to make sure and figure out how to fund this, but it falls in there in those same time frames. But this one really, like I said, is the focus to get that going just as quickly as we've got the money.
I've got about 3 years to bitch about that. I'll see you every week.
Hopefully we can get something that we can all live with and we won't have to.
Wife's been in that house for 40-some years.
I bought it from a Ruppel. Yeah, it's her home.
And then I'd say that the center of the house was built in 1860 by the Ruppels. And it was down there where the doctor's house was, or it still is. It was on the corner there. And they made a hay barn out of it. And then some of the kids got married and they broke off some acreage for them in 1941 and moved it down there and cleaned the hay out of it and made a house out of it. So now that's part of our house.
Well, it is tough when you think about, this is going to be a great project, and yet, yeah, it's going to increase traffic, and it's going to take people's yards, and it's tough, and
And like I say, when we first started playing with this in here, and with Lindsay, and we came across, we talked to him and going on his 160 acres. And well, it was going to be great, we was going to get a sidewalk in front of the house, But now it looks like I'm going to get 25 feet in front of my house.
And the sidewalks are an interesting thing too. We've learned, you think people on sidewalks, well, this many people do, but then when you turn, they don't. So, it's a tough thing to look at. I've already been contacted by a citizen who wants the speed limit on the straightaway there to be increased, because this citizen will be driving regularly to work and doesn't want to drive 30 miles. So I'm just saying, I'm not necessarily agreeing with that, but
Salem also connects to Weddington, and they
Yeah.
also go that.
there you go. Good idea. I'll write them back.
I have a question for you and Alan, if I can. I mean, with the Weddington plan in place, are you guys thinking about the timing of this project as a way to sort of advance some of the things on that agenda?
Well,
I'm looking at Jeremy.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. This is probably a good question for you.
Because I do think there was a really positive response to the Weddington plan. Do you all feel that way? Did people participated? And I felt like I enjoyed it. Lawrence was great in my group. We were in group together, and that was such a great project, and I commend the city staff for the time and effort they put into that. And so I think they were looking at this when you were thinking about all of this when you were doing it. So I think your answer is yes, and I think we support the mingling of this plan with that plan, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are actually happening right now. Obviously, with the highway department looking at their crossing of I-540 and the new bridge and new interchange there, that's part of this whole discussion about how that works and if that marries with our master plan. And particularly, I think the primary component of that is getting safe pedestrian access across I-40, regardless of whether it's a roundabout or some other interchange improvement. But that's really what we're focusing on as being the principle, really, of that discussion. But secondly, normally out of these master plan processes, one of the first steps we look at is rezoning, because a lot of times when we talk about the different uses and different properties and what citizens envision happening within this area, a lot of times it's not enabled because the zoning's not there to really support or encourage that type of development. So we're going through an exercise right now of trying to focus on what properties are important, what property owners are interested in rezoning already. We actually already have one or two requests that have come in that are on the Planning Commission Council agenda in this area that seem to be consistent with that plan, and we're excited when they come in and ask about it because they're at least knowledgeable about that. So that, from city staff's perspective, that's probably what you'll see next is a comprehensive rezoning package. It probably is not the entire acreage of the entire Weddington corridor plan, but like in Fayette Junction, which is in South Fayetteville, we concentrated on a core area, and so that's what we're doing some analysis right now on that. So that will, I think, in conjunction with this happening, that will certainly be a focus, and we actually may look outside of the plan boundary because obviously the land use is all along Rupel, and what happens there is a critical part of how this will develop in the future. So certainly something that we'll continue to be active about.
Something that I thought was important that came out of the Weddington corridor plan was that it was establishing Rupel Road as the heart of the neighborhood, and I think this just kind of supports that because it will have the pedestrian infrastructure and and things like that. So I think it is kind of coherent with that.
Can I tell you what's on my mind about this?
Yes.
Right now is that this neighborhood between Persimmon and Weddington, the housing values are still struggling tremendously. We've had a number of houses in this area that are appraising far below where they had appraised just maybe even in say 2010. There's been a dramatic drop, and there's no mechanism for turning this around except for either nothing sells for years and then we start fresh, or we do something in the neighborhood to make the neighborhood livable. And I see this project as sort of a crossroads moment where either this becomes where the increase in traffic becomes a detriment to the neighborhood and makes it an undesirable place to live, or the conjunction of access and amenity makes it a very desirable place to live. And so that's where my concern is right now. It's sort of kind of an either-or moment for the neighborhood.
Very good thing to talk about, because I think it has great potential for being the latter. I think it's a beautiful, with the club, I mean, the best park in Fayetteville, right there, you know, the Boys and Girls Club, and the schools, great schools, and, yeah, I think, and you mentioned that in the Weddington plan, we were talking about where schools and senior centers and parks and libraries, and where we were gonna go with that part of our city. Very important to think about. So even, let's talk about the median a little bit. I know that at one point, I heard some conversation about how the median, with the raised median and trees, requires a lot of maintenance, and sometimes medians like that start looking bad, because somebody's got to water them and mow them, and so there are some best practices, I guess, of sunken medians, where they don't require the. So could y'all talk a little bit about that? What's the median going to look like? I mean, that could be a piece of this that's important, I think, to view from the neighborhood.
Down Rupel, is there any reason you couldn't just have turn lanes?
Break the median. Well, and that's really a big piece of the design as we move through. You know, down in this area, the new location, we show 3 median breaks, all associated with future street connections. These are 2 master street plan collectors, and this is Alberta Street, which is the adjacent subdivision here. So, you know, the breaks are something that we have to design in. We do have, on this southern segment, we are proposing a depressed median, and it's a stormwater feature. It's for LID, kind of filter stormwater before it goes into the stormwater system. You also don't have to water the trees as much, because it does capture that water, and the trees can use that. There are challenges to making that design work as well. You have to have a wide median, you need about 15 feet width. So as we get up into this existing section where we have a narrower median, we're not planning to do that. Similar up through here, this is the existing median, so it'd be difficult to kind of cut that in.
Because
so we are proposing a portion of it out here. And I think, you know, we've talked a lot as staff about the operational cost of medians. Again, they have a lot of benefits. You know, you can put the trees in there, that helps slow traffic down. You know, it's aesthetic, obviously, but the maintenance is something that our operations staff, transportation staff have to go out and keep those maintained, whether it be mowed or weeded or whatever. So yeah, that's something that is a challenge.
You planted all those trees along Royals, you put the sewer plant in, and I think they put them in 2 or 3 times because there's not enough, you don't have enough people to keep them alive.
And what we've been doing recently is the contract for any tree planting, Mount Comfort Road is an example. The city hired a contractor to plant trees along Mount Comfort. Included in that package was a 3-year maintenance. The contractor has to try this for 3 years.
Till they get established.
Normally, after 3 years, your rate of the trees are basically going to survive. So we've added that in. It increases the cost, but it does allow us to have the contractor come back and replace them if they don't make it.
Do you all have any kind of visual pictures in your mind of what it ought to look like that will increase?
We definitely, for aesthetic reasons and for noise, for traffic control, we definitely want trees. I mean, we would not want to see a turn lane or just an empty grass median in our section of Rupel Road. We actually have a horticulturalist at the university that lives in our neighborhood that wrote a guide for our neighborhood about how to select trees that survive these conditions better. And the trees, there are actually trees across from us now that are there. And they've more or less made it, but he says those are not the species of trees, and we'd be glad to send that information your way.
Have y'all got it yet? No, would you? If you got my email, if you send it, I'll get it. Yeah.
I mean, medians look nice, but it has to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from your front yard. I just know that. And they had projected there would be 24,000 vehicles a day on this road, so know that also.
as compared to what now? Do you know?
Right, on our street, nothing right now. 10 cars an hour. Someone has been run over on our street, someone that used to walk every day.
Come down on our street about 8 o'clock in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon when school's getting out. You couldn't get to the mailbox.
15 feet, section. Between Weddington and...
Take shelter, are you serious?
No, I'm just checking, I think.
Check it, like now? Is anybody else checking their phones right now?
No.
All of you? Did you just get a
I'm just
word?
getting a call from the home, so.
Oh, Don?
I didn't get the city
Warning?
Yeah, actually west of Fayetteville, so I'm monitoring that, but just want to make sure everybody knows that. That's probably what it was. So you need to go to the west, or downstairs. The stairwell is right there.
You're saying we should go?
Well, I will come back, I'm just letting you know where to go.
Are you all planning to come on the next input session at the Boys and Girls Club? Is there anybody here who can't be there, or what should we do here?
It's already west side of town. That's already there.
That's our house. Yeah.
That's home.
Well, Don and I talked before we came, and if you feel safer getting home before a storm hits.
Yeah. You have people at home who need
Or pets. I'm happy to stay.
I
can
think,
stay in the shelter.
I think there are just so many important, at some point, I think we know that the city has to design streets according, they have to look at sewer and water and all these things, but I think what you just said is so important, and I'm so glad you said it the way you did, is that we have to, and I trust our staff would be very mindful of how we make this property value go up, and all that the good things are in place when we do this, and so by punching that out there, I think we need to just keep saying that every time we talk about this, and I know, you live in work, you know too, you care about your property value too, so we're...
And I'll just say about the meeting on the 30th, the plan is to be a different format than this. We'll have a couple of these maps on a little bit larger scale so you can see the whole thing. We'll have staff there to talk one-on-one with you guys for as long as you want to talk. So if you want to come and talk about it, or you want to provide the written comments, but it'll allow you to really talk in more detail and see these, spend as much time as you want looking at the cross sections. I'll have some better answers for you later too. So
talk to Lionel. He's what was involved in that.
So our emails in this city are not the easiest things in the world to remember, but I'm going to say them out loud again. Ward 4, WARD4, _POS1, that's me. POS2, that's Alan, at ci.fayetteville.ar.us. And we're easy to find on the website. But do you think we're trying to really, Alan and I, our goal is to get the communication going, listen to these things that are important, and see, and then work well with our city staff and make this be just a gorgeous, beautiful project, a boulevard with trees and value, something that's attractive to people when they go to buy a new home, if they want to live there. It's close to the schools and close to, and we want your backyard to still be a good place for your family to hang out. So we all want that, and so times like this when we can talk about it, we're going to have a street, we know that, but how can we make it be just absolutely the best it can possibly be? And I believe we can. I'm optimistic that we can. Aren't you, Chris?
Chris,
we're not. We will.
I am real happy to hear you talk about some of these traffic calming features in the design. Because I don't live there, and I don't live north of where Subaru's got their new place, and I go north and go up intersect 112. And I drive 10 or 15 miles over the speed limit on that wide open section of road where there's nothing in sight. And then when I get to the curve, I slow down to 20 or 25 miles an hour. So people are going to drive on that stretch at the speed that they feel is appropriate. I firmly believe that. So the trick is to make them feel like something slower is appropriate. And I'm glad to hear you thinking along those lines.
Yes.
I
Well,
think that
yeah.
because from MLK to Persimmon, that's such a long straightaway. I mean, that looks like a racetrack waiting to happen. And so I'm curious, maybe where you have the possible intersection occurring, is go ahead and, you know, roundabouts are kind of a neat thing. Build a roundabout right there in that node, you know, that kind of stops somebody, you know, that we're going to plan for this slow down traffic and build a roundabout. You got the land right now to do it, so why not put one in right there?
And probably less expensive to do it up front too than it is to do it now.
That's a great,
You know, it's a
you know, you think about deer-car collisions out there in that area, and we're concerned, it's not just
It breaks
humans,
it up, and I think it's kind of a
yeah.
neat area of that part of town.
I like that idea.
All right, good. Sorry you didn't get to introduce yourself, I'm glad you're here. Hi, Gerald, I'm Rhonda Adams. Gerald has a couple comments.
Well, before it gets too far along in the design process, when will we actually be able to look at the design before it's finalized? We're a property owner with a quarter mile of frontage, and we had 3 interests from day one that we were kind of led to believe would be implemented. And I just want to make sure they are before it gets too far along.
3 interests?
Were you at the meeting we had with the?
Yes, back earlier,
Yes.
with the engineers.
Yeah.
And we related that,
Okay.
but I'm pretty sure they took care of one of them.
Okay.
Situations we discussed. But I just wanted to make sure before the alignment and everything's finalized,
Okay.
acquisition processes.
Yeah, I'll verify that, but I think all of the items, as I understand, all the items that you had were items that we were going to incorporate into the design. You'll get your opportunity because we have to acquire property from you, and if it's not to your satisfaction, then you got some leverage in that point, so.
But I also understand, I've been through this process.
Sure.
For many years, and I understand if it's too far along, it's tough. You always want to implement the changes early in the game.
You're absolutely right.
But you feel the one interest we have is going to take care of it.
I think so, wasn't it related to the alignment? Yeah.
As far as the center line, and I saw where they'd staked it, and it looked like they'd been taken care of. What about the median cuts? Because I know you need to address that on the front end. You don't ever want to come in after the fact and start carrying out an inconvenience in the traffic. Right. You need to implement it early in the game. With 40-mile frontage, we just want to warn them.
Yeah, we show breaks at the master street plan, where we have some collectors on the master street plan, and that's where we show them now. The number is what we want to shoot for, but the actual location of those is flexible. Yeah, and it's really just kind of working with you guys to get that sorted out. Yeah.
But the number is pretty set.
We'd like to keep it to that. Yes.
To 3.
Have y'all talked about roundabouts at those areas at all?
I've thought about that a little bit. I think it's definitely something good to consider. Now, it really locks you in to that intersection, so we want to be very, very sure with the property owners and everything that we've got it where it needs to be.
Can't put a come and go right there.
Yeah.
Around. Okay. Yeah. Well, good. Well, I do like the idea very much. Yeah.
Is there any chance you could use on some of those collector intersections, some sort of the chokers? I don't know how that would work with it, 4 lanes, if you can use chokers and things like that. Just slow traffic down.
Yeah, I mean, you normally use those for turning traffic, just to slow the servers down.
That's what I was talking about, where the collectors. Just a thought, if we're talking traffic.
Good idea too.
Roundabouts are kind of permanent, and I like the idea, it's just, smaller measures can be more up that way.
Good point.
This is an aside, Chris, but can you tell me what experience you've had so far with the roundabout that's up by the hospital?
Yeah, I think in general, as far as the traffic congestion and handling the traffic, it's really been extremely impressive. I mean, it's changed the traffic flow tremendously. We have, and we're continuing to monitor, we had some folks who were needing to make a left turn, and they made a left turn. We're thinking that's going to subside as time goes on, and we're looking at ways to stripe it and provide some arrows, provide signage to help people. I feel like some of the striping and signage that we had out there to start with was kind of confusing. It gave some mixed signals, almost too much information that didn't match up, and so we're continuing to evaluate that. There's a standard out there called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD. That's kind of like the Bible of traffic engineers. And we did it just like the MUTCD shows it, but I just don't agree with some of what those standards are. And so we're learning. We're definitely learning what works and what doesn't.
And any fender benders out there?
There hadn't, as of a couple of weeks ago, the chief said that there had not been any.
That's impressive.
So, yeah.
One thing that I've noticed that's really improved with the roundabout, as far as traffic, is in the mornings I pass that location every morning around 7:30, and there's not traffic backed up onto the freeway anymore.
540, yeah.
And that's really scary when you're headed on 540 and the traffic's
Out in your
back
lane.
to the bridge almost, and so that doesn't happen anymore. So I feel like that at least is a lot safer.
Let's encourage.
Yeah.
Frank, did you have some things you want to talk about with us tonight?
Well, I've always been concerned about, I've always been concerned about that there be a trail on Rupel Road, because there's a plan to extend that trail on over the mountain to the new regional park off Cato Springs Road. It's a very short distance in the Smokehouse Trail through that one property owner to get to the regional park. So when that property is developed, it's critical. I mean, when I'm saying that the property on top of Mount Kessler is developed, it's critical that trail continue on to the regional park, so kids can take their bikes from Owl Creek and Boys and Girls Club on to the regional park, soccer fields, all that.
And this is with that in mind, Jeremy? And is that being on the west side of the street part of that need?
Well, yeah, I think it could be really on either side and still function. That's definitely something we talked about, is that trail connection.
Going all the way through.
We try to keep it on one side, keep people who were going north and south, our route, didn't have to continue crossing over streets and then back. That was really one of the purposes of talking with Matt Holovich. He felt it was more important to try to keep it on one side, so we're trying to keep the same section all the way through.
Good point. Thanks, Mr. Sharp.
Did I hear a question back here? Okay, I thought I did.
We think we're hearing a vacuum cleaner or a siren. Well, do we have any, do you have any specific concerns about your backyard and what happens back there?
One of my concerns is just the noise that's going to be created, especially with the increase in traffic. The number that so scares me if there's really going to be that many, because there's lots of young children that live in that Mountain Ranch subdivision that are going to be crossing that street to go to school now and in the future and so on, and go to the Boys and Girls Club. So the school helps us with an obvious way to keep the speed down. So I think keeping the speed down is a big thing, and then whatever sort of trees and landscaping that can be done to knock down any noise throughout that too would be nice. Because the beautiful part about being back there right now is there's no traffic, so it's nice and quiet. And I wasn't sure if the road was going to come straight south and jog over it. It actually helps me, I think, to actually jog over, just in terms of moving that traffic away a little bit. But speed is a major concern for a lot of us in that neighborhood.
Is noise something you all will incorporate into design? Is it what can?
Yeah, well, this, obviously, traffic is going to create some noise. Typically, your really, really bad noise problems are on higher speed areas, interstates, et cetera.
So,
Thank y'all, appreciate you coming.
so we don't normally do like speed walls or
Okay.
any kind of walls or anything like that.
Will is there any chance of having no trucks through here, or is this isn't our church? I mean, trucks are gonna be able to come through here. That would have been one of my ideas for no noise, but I don't know if we can,
I mean, you can designate no through trucks. The enforcement of that is difficult. Police officer here may be able to talk about that, but that's,
I'm just very glad you're here.
so
Something
you
to
could
think
do that,
about.
but I don't know whether we want to do that. I mean, obviously, your trucks have to find a way through town as well, so.
Usually you see them going you see larger trucks, I would think, staying on roads where they would be coming from somewhere to go to somewhere, which would be the larger streets, I would think. But in this, right now, I think we see a lot of dump trucks and equipment.
No motorcycles or trucks, could we do that?
No, not during Bike Blues barbecue, it wouldn't work.
No, it's a good point, though, and I think thinking about the kind of plants and the kind of, yeah. So, what are we missing, Mr. Sharp? All right, 7 o'clock.
In terms of bike lanes, I cycle to work, I commute to work occasionally, I work at university. Bike lanes aren't any good if they're full of debris. So I'm a fan of bike lanes, but I'm a fan if they're kept free of debris. Otherwise, last week being Bike to Work week, I rode because there's really no good way from my neighborhood to the university. But I took Rupel up to Mount Comfort and came over that way. But the bike lane, even on Mount Comfort, is full of debris. And I'm in a lane, not the bike lane at that point, because I'm going to risk flat tires. So now I'm for either the Ciros, I guess, or the large trail. Large trail, the diehards aren't going to be on the trail, though. They're going to be on the road. And I do know that the Owl Creek area is a very, very popular place for large group rides to form. I've seen your face on a bike all the time. I think you ride together. We all look different without our helmets on. But, so, I know that you're going to see a lot of cyclists through that area, too. And I think the connection to MLK is great, and I think it opens up some more routes for us as cyclists. But designing it in a way that's just as efficient for a bike as a car, I think, is important.
So glad you said that. You all talked about it. It's flat. It's a flat part of our city, and so it does draw the attention of those who like to bike, and also those who are doing it for speed exercise and that sort of thing. So, what is our city plan on cleaning that part of? I kind of noticed that too.
Yeah. Well, we have a vacuum. The transportation division has a vacuum truck, a sweeper truck that goes around. They have a route, and it's really just a matter of making sure that they hit that route often enough. So.
If I call the director of transportation tomorrow night, we get some, make sure that we've got that on the schedule.
Yeah, I think that's just